Hello everyone, and today we'll talk about a very interesting topic, and we'll talk about happiness. So I'll give you a formula actually that Jonathan Haidt gives in his book on how to be happy. And this is really interesting. So in the past, Stoics and Buddha and ancient philosophers noted that happiness comes from within. And to get it, you need to get rid of attachments because external things cause attachments. And so they suggested that getting rid of attachments is important. But Jonathan Haidt, in his book, The Happiness Hypothesis, based on more modern research, also mentions that external factors can give you happiness as well. It's about finding the right external factors and about finding the balance. And he actually talks about it as the yin-yang type of phenomenon. So he says that we need both the yin and the yang. We need both the first half, which is the yin, internal work, things like meditation they'll talk about to give you peace and tranquility, what Buddha says, non-action, non-striving, just remaining in a state of peace. And Roman and Stoics kind of thought about it as being emotional, indifferent, and apathetic to things that are not important, right? So finding that calm and stillness, but also the yang piece, whereby you're passionate about something external, and you want to achieve and strive for it as well. And the reason why we have to extend the Buddha type of mentality is because Buddha was born, right? He was a son of a king, and he was born at a time when there's a lot of violence, war, disease. Now we don't live at this time, and we can set ourselves long-term goals that we are very passionate for. So we need to have a balance between the internal yin, which is made up of doing internal work to get rid of attachments. But there's some attachments, as modern research in psychology illustrates, that are important to us and they'll also give us happiness. So we still want to strive for something because now we live at a time where we're safe. We're not under violence, we're not under disease, and we can actually set goals and actually achieve them, which is awesome. So Jonathan Haidt in his book talks about something called the adaptation principle. And that's how we all have a genetically determined set point, which is hereditary. And so it's determined by genes. And some people are just more optimistic than others. But he also notes that whenever something good happens to us, like winning the lottery, or something bad, like hitting your neck and getting paralyzed neck down, you will reach the same level of happiness within a year. Or even he mentions within a couple of months, these two guys, a person who won a lottery and a person who was paralyzed, achieved the same level of happiness. It is just that immediately after you win a lottery, you get this dopamine hit, so you feel greatly immediately and lots of pleasure, versus when you're paralyzed, you feel pain and suffering. But eventually, you hit that baseline again. So we highly underestimate the duration of our reactions after something happens to us, good or bad. We think that if something good happens to us, we increase our expectations and want more and more good, and we think that we will have this good forever. And same thing as if something bad happens to us, we reduce our expectations, we become hopeless, and we think that more and more bad is going to come to us, like as if we're catastrophizing. We think it's like this, but really it's like this. We come back to this genetically determined set point. Now that's not a bad thing, because we can actually alter it, as we'll see later when I present the happiness formula. Now, Jonathan Haidt in his book also talks about something called the hedonic treadmill that goes hand in hand with the Stoics and Buddha philosophy, whereby wanting more and more doesn't necessarily give you any, doesn't get you any further and leaves you no better than where you were before. Think of mice or rats going on a treadmill and they're just going nowhere, even though they're trying really fast. They're striving more and more, but they're getting nowhere. And so really wanting more materialistic possessions doesn't really do you much. So you definitely want to get rid of materialistic attachments. So that's where I think the Stoics and the Buddha are correct in. We want to get rid of attachments that are materialistic, that you think will give you pleasure, but they're just objects. But at the same time, you do want to set passionate goals that you're very excited for achieving. He also talks about the progress principle, so that's kind of similar to what I just mentioned, where the elephant is happy each time we make progress towards the goals. An elephant, as we mentioned, go back to the previous video if you haven't watched it yet, you have the rider and the elephant. And the rider is the person is the rational mind, and the elephant is the emotional. It's the one that's governed by kind of your gut instincts and just pleasure and pain. So that elephant really likes when you're making progress towards your goals. And Shakespeare himself said, joy, soul likes in the doing, not when things are done. Okay, so it's the process, getting closer and closer, getting that dopamine hit every time as you're getting closer to your final destination. However, he then shows that psychology research illustrates, as I already mentioned, external factors matter. So yes, you want to get rid of attachments, reach that peace and tranquility. But as I mentioned, you want to have that passionate peace. You want to strive for something. And as I already mentioned, there are external factors which are important. So what are they? Well, psychology research actually illustrates some things that are very important. The first one is noise. Specifically, variable and intermittent noise is fucking terrible. It takes away from your happiness and reduces cognitive function. Unfortunately, noise just takes away from your happiness. Especially when you have construction workers nearby and people put their favorite music that every 40 seconds. Noise just takes away from your happiness. So that's why taking nature walks and having that peace through meditation or finding that inner peace, even think of inner noise, of having those negative thoughts all the time, but mainly external noise. Find a comfortable, quiet place. Those daily hassles, hearing that loud noise on a daily basis, just takes away from your happiness. The second factor is a long commute time. So especially if it's filled with heavy traffic, that can cause high levels of stress. So driving to work for a very long time every day, unfortunately, takes away from your happiness, especially if there's a lot of traffic. In fact, recent research, not mentioned in the book, but recent research actually showed that 16 minutes is the ideal zone, because 16 minutes is not too much, such that will not make you go insane, but also not too little, such that you have time for yourself. And so 16 minutes actually gives you more good than harm. But like an hour driving to work every day is not a good idea. If you have a long commute time, listen to an audiobook or podcast and use that time for personal development. That's what I do, and that's actually very powerful. The next one is lack of control. So having a sense of control increases your level of happiness. And it's why the above two take away from happiness, because we can't control noise and commute time. And that's why it's best to try to limit loud noise and choose the easiest route with least traffic. So leaving to work early can help with this. But having a sense of control, and this has been shown with like residents of a hospital, when they're given choice on what flowers to have, and they're given the ability to water them, as well as when they're able to decide the type of movie to watch for movie night, their subjective levels of happiness were much higher than those who had no choice in what flowers to have in their rooms and in their resident locations in the hospital, and if they have no choice in what movie to watch, their subjective levels of happiness were lower. So having that not choice, but having that control is important. So essentially they're going hand in hand. So being able to choose what plants, what flowers you want, what movie to watch, having that sense of control by being able to choose is definitely good. Now, too much choice is also not a good thing, because then those people that have too much choice usually go after materialistic possessions and want more and more, and that's actually leads to less happiness. But having a reasonable amount of choice and control does increase happiness. And the last one is relationships. So good relationships is a very important part, because interpersonal conflicts, conflicts with your boss, with your partner, those take away from happiness. In fact, long-term good marriage is very important for long-term happiness. You want to have a good marriage and also good friendships. So that's why being lonely and being introverted unfortunately takes away from happiness. And that's why people that are extrovert tend to be happier. Seligman also noted that pleasures and gratifications are different. And gratifications is when you use your strength to achieve something that's challenging, but not too challenging, where you're fully immersed and in the flow state. So you want to be fully immersed. You want to be in this flow state where you're fully immersed and you're doing something that you're capable of doing, that you have the skills and strengths, but so that's not too challenging, that you're able to do it, but also that gives you enough degree of challenge. So finding just the right challenge also brings happiness. So finding that work that you love and like it brings you passion, and when you do it, the time just goes by. You're really in the flow state. And Haidt also cites Robert Frank's research and noted that money can actually buy us happiness if we spend it appropriately, but not on things that make you look good in front of others to increase your reputation and self-esteem, but rather things that allow you to be with other people. You have to look for the experience where you interact with other people rather than comparing yourself to others. So it's all about the relationships. So going on vacation, going ski kayaking, and even enjoying a meal, but not the meal itself, but the experience of eating with other people. So it's the experience of an action that gives happiness, not the actual materialistic possession. So we call these conspicuous and inconspicuous possessions or something. It's in the book. But essentially, you want to strive not for objects, but for the experiences because the experience is when you actually socialize and you are with other people. So that's where vacation is so good. And remember, Shakespeare said the joyous soul likes in the doing. So you want to actually do things, experience things with other people, not just go for and buy possessions that you think will make you rich, like luxuries. That's when we get into the happiness trap. More and more, you're still in that hedonic treadmill, does not give you happiness. So in short, there's actually a formula, and happiness H is equals to the set point S, which is genetically determined. Some people are just genetically more inclined to be happier, based on some people are more optimistic, and is based on the brain hemispheres. One part is more active than the other, for example. So this part is genetic, but there's also conditions, and these are external factors that we already mentioned: having good relationships, being in a peace environment away from a lot of noise, having a shorter commute time or at least one with less traffic and a commute time that's more predictable rather than one with a lot of noise and construction and whatever. Having some degree of control and really having good relationships, as well as having passion in what you're doing and being in the flow state. And then, of course, plus also voluntary actions. So these are actions that also bring you happiness, like exercise. I'll be doing a book shortly that I bought recently. It's called The Spark. And John Rady talks about the beauty of exercise in improving your mood and makes you happier. Things like meditation, how Eastern philosophy is all based on meditation to give you calm and tranquility. Of course, that's going to give you happiness because that's going to reduce your negative thinking. We already talked about other ones like CBT, for example, right? To challenge negative thoughts, right? And there's a lot of other voluntary actions that you can do to increase happiness, right? Like getting a massage, getting good sleep, having a healthy diet, etc. So it's all of these things combined that give you happiness. Even just smiling actually releases feel-good hormones, and greeting people enthusiastically and just being happy that you're alive. All of those things increase happiness. So set point, which you can't control, conditions, good relationships, a job that you're passionate about, where in the flow state, or not only your job. Like I like making YouTube videos, so you can also have like a part-time hobby as well outside of your job, as well as voluntary actions, meditation, exercise, etc. So these are actions that you can do daily, like rituals, to increase your happiness. So again, you can change C, move to a quieter neighborhood, choose routes with less traffic, enhance relationships to reduce conflict. You can increase V, interact with other people, friends, your family, using your strengths to help other people. So doing what you love, right? And being in a flow state and helping others, using your strength to help others. Gratitude for others who do good things to you, right? Doing things rather than having more. So really being appreciative for the experiences that they spend with other people, and it's the experiences. Really think about the experiences, gratitude, etc., and having good relationships. In fact, people in Calcutta, and the author gives this example, are actually one of the happiest people. They're actually as happy as people who are rich, and yet they live in poverty. They are so poor that they have to sell their bodies. Just think about it. They're so poor that they can't afford anything, and they know that their future is going to be full of suffering, but yet they're still happy because what they do is they don't go out buying luxuries for these end products, but yet they value meaningful relationships much more. So this is something to think about. A big aspect of happiness is not only luxury, but it's made out of having a peaceful mind away from negative thinking, as well as having external factors that you're actually passionate about and meaningful, that are meaningful to you, such as good external relationships, right? It's an external factor. Meaningful relationships is huge. Finding the job that you love, and of course, daily rituals like meditations that will give you a peace of mind and happiness, as well as other factors like exercise, a healthy diet, etc. So there's a lot of things that you can do to increase your happiness, both from within, internal factors, but also from the outside as well, such as good relationships and a job that you really enjoy doing.